by MyGov to Fanyika jostling for posts has reached fever pitch ahead of ZANU-PF's extraordinary Congress next week, with the resurgent liberation war fighters going all out to reclaim positions that had fallen to former President Robert Mugabe's allies, General Constantine Chiwenga, having turned the tables on their rivals with the help of the military, which stepped in last month to save the ex-combatants from total annihilation by the Generation 40 G40 faction. The war veterans are taking no prisoners and giving no quarter in the bid to tightly control ZANU-PF. They had been banished to being spectators in the internal affairs of ZANU-PF after G40 took all the critical positions in the party, with the help of Grace Mugabe, the then First Lady. Until the military's intervention last month, G40 had vanquished the rival Team Lacoste faction, which was campaigning for Emerson Mnangagwa to succeed Mugabe, following Mnangagwa's inauguration last month as the country's second executive president since independence. The Zimbabwe National Liberation War Veterans Association (ZNLWVA) is not negotiating on its demands for total control of all the influential positions in ZANU-PF. They feel that with Mnangagwa at the top, they want to avoid mistakes of the past by selecting office holders with impeccable liberation war credentials to safeguard the revolution. Fierce jostling for the positions has thus emerged, among them with Zimbabwe Defense Forces Commander Constantino Chiwenga tipped to become one of the two vice presidents. The party's constitution entitles Mnangagwa to appoint his deputies. The national chairperson, heads of the Politburo, and their deputies are members of the Central Committee. In terms of the unity accord, the other VP post should go to a former ZAPU cadre, with Kembo Mohadi, Shinga Dube and Jacob Mudenda touted for the position. The party is also contemplating appointing a national chairperson, a position which is currently vacant. The other key positions targeted by the war veterans include that of Secretary for Administration, previously occupied by Ignatius Chombo, Secretary for the Commissariat previously under Saviour Kasukuwe, Secretary for Women's Affairs headed previously by Grace, and Secretary for Youth Affairs held in the interim by Puparai Togaripi. Mnangagwa's right-hand man, July Moyo, who used to deputize Chombo, is tipped to take over as his replacement. Matemedana, however, told the Daily News this week that the Congress was mainly to confirm Mnangagwa as the ZANU-PF first secretary and its presidential candidate in next year's elections. The Congress has one agenda: to confirm the president, because all other positions will be filled by appointment, while other wings such as the Youth and Women's Leagues will simply co-opt replacements. The Youth League has since confirmed that Togaripi is the new Youth League secretary because we agreed that his dismissal was not procedural. Matemedana said. Musvangwa, a war veteran, is currently the acting Women's League boss after the party expelled Grace and recalled her husband from government. The development flies in the face of the party's Central Committee resolutions that we should propose an amendment to our constitution to remove any notion of one center of power at the Extraordinary Congress. ZNLWVA spokesperson Douglas Mafia told the Daily News recently that former freedom fighters were particularly keen on the commissar's post. We have not changed our position, and we are not going to change. We have said we want that key position to be held by someone with impeccable liberation war credentials, because it is only such a person who has capacity to fully comprehend the demands of the job in line with the ZANU-PF revolutionary ethos. Mahia said. Either Justice Mawejayena or Louis Mathuthu could be elected as Togaripi's deputy. Togaripi told the Daily News that the duo would get an equal chance at Congress, saying party youths had since made their recommendations to the ZANU-PF top leadership on the preferred choices. Wejayena and Mathuthu, like any other youths, will be given an equal opportunity to contest for positions. In fact, we have since made our recommendations, which I am not at liberty to reveal now because we will be guided by the leadership. Togaripi said yesterday. Togaripi and Mathuthu were sacked last year as Secretary for Youth Affairs and Youth Secretary for Administration respectively for their links to the Mnangagwa camp in the battle to succeed Mugabe. Togari P was replaced by Kuchinai Chipanga, who was his deputy, while Mathuthu's position was given to Xavier Kazizi. Chipanga fell from grace following the collapse of the G40 project along with some members of his executive. Anastancia Ndhlovu Mpelebeo Malinga, Deputy Youth Secretary, Kazizi Tongai Kasukuwea, Secretary for Finance, and Innocent Hamandish, Political Commissar, to complete their whitewash of the G40 faction. The war veterans also want to take control of the Secretary for Science and Technology post, previously held by Jonathan Moyo. Sydney Segera may also be pushed out as Secretary for War, Veterans, Detainees, Restrictees and the Welfare, with Christopher Musvangwa, who was his deputy before his dismissal from ZANU-PF last year, likely to bounce back to head the portfolio. Togari P said youths had no problem with war veterans getting a lion's share of the strategic posts in the ruling party. Not only war veterans but also all freedom fighters, including ex-detainees and restrictees and other war collaborators, should take up senior and strategic positions. As the youths, we have no problem with that, because they will mentor us on the party ethos so that we will be fully equipped to take over leadership when the time comes, so we are fully behind the demands by war veterans. Togari P, who leads an association of war collaborators in the country. There are also vacancies among Politburo committee members following the death of Shava Imahofa and George Rutanhai last year, which might also fall to the ex-combatants. Other vacancies exist at the deputy secretary level where perceived G40 functionaries, among them Charles Tavengwa, Deputy Secretary for Finance, Daniel Shumba, Deputy Secretary for Transport and Social Welfare, Absalom Sikorzana, Deputy Secretary for Implementation and Economic Empowerment, Douglas Momes Hora, Deputy Secretary for Health, and Patrick Duweo, Deputy Secretary for Science and Technology, are likely to lose the positions. ZANU-PF spokesperson Simon Kayumoyo could not be drawn into confirming the developments, saying, "Let us wait for Congress to ratify all the recommendations that have been made by Congress. It also remains to be seen if the party will stick to the one center of power principle adopted in 2014 to concentrate all the influence in Mugabe in the wake of concerns that his deputy then, Joyce Mujuru, was becoming too powerful." At its Central Committee meeting last month, it was recommended that the one center of power principle be done away with. Kayumoyo said the Central Committee was not Congress, so it can only make recommendations. All the Central Committee does is to recommend, and then Congress looks at the recommendations with a view to either ratify or discard them, he said. Another contentious issue to be considered is the possibility of reviving the women's quota, which was brought up at the party 2015 conference in Victoria Falls. The quota system was introduced in 2004 to enable the rise of former Vice President Joyce Mujuru, only to be discarded in 2014 when she was fired from ZANU-PF. Daily News.